All right, man, we got a good morning today. It is 96 degrees. It's a little warm, but another amazing day. We got a lot of cloud coverage, so we don't even see the sun. And so we are really excited to get this run done today. This is day 21, and I will see you guys when I get back. All right, one more day down, one less day to go. So, today I was thinking about this idea about greatness. I was running and I was thinking about this idea about greatness and how a lot of us, we think about greatness as this big thing, this huge thing. We think about the Michael Jordans of the world. We think about, these iconic figures in our history, and we see the trajectory of where they gotten or what they have achieved, and we think about where we are. And we think about there's no way that I could go from where I am to be a Michael Jordan, right? And, when I was growing up, it would have been really easy to give up on every single one of my dreams. Because when, a lot of people don't know this, but my parents, they came from wealth. They actually were pretty well off in their youth. But in their midlife, for reasons that I don't care to get into, they lost their wealth. And when I was about 10 years old, they pretty much had lost everything. So much so that we were living in one of the worst neighborhoods in the city that we lived in. And just to put it into perspective, one of my neighbors, literally a van drove up and snatched him up into the van and he disappeared. Ironically, 35 years later, I ran into him in Arizona and he started telling me the story of his life and how he had been kidnapped out of this neighborhood. And we realized, wow, this is the kid that I was riding bikes with, and the van drove up and they snatched him into the van and they took off. I never saw him again when I was a kid. But I ran into him as an adult. I thought it was the craziest small world kind of thing, but that was the kind of neighborhood I lived in. The kind of neighborhood where you walk up, you walk down the stairs of your apartment complex and you go to the dumpster and you go throw the trash out and you find a body in the dumpster. I grew up there. The kind of neighborhood where, across the main road, there was a very predominant gang. And then across to the side where you live, there was another predominant gang. And you had to walk that main road for, 3 to 4 miles, 5 miles just to get to your high school. And at any moment, the people that didn't like you because you lived on the other side of the main road and assumed that you were part of that gang could drive up at any moment with 3 or 4 people in a car and jump you. The kind of neighborhood where 3 to 4 times a year you would find out that one of your friends had been shot. The kind of neighborhood where you could be playing basketball at the local school and a car could drive up at any minute and open fire on the crowd of kids that are playing basketball, and you can see one of your friends get shot in the knee while everybody's running and scattering everywhere, and he drops to the ground not knowing that he has been shot. These are all experiences that I had. The kind of neighborhood where you show up to school in the morning and they're doing a moment of silence because one of your friends over the weekend got caught up on a drive-by that wasn't even meant for him. It was meant for somebody else, but he just happened to be outside of his house. That was my environment growing up. And as far as the economical challenges, well, when my parents split up, my mom was on her own and she was raising 2 kids. And she couldn't afford an apartment. And you know how government assistance is there? Well, government assistance is there, but you have to make a certain amount of money to qualify. And because my mom didn't make that kind of money, they didn't help her.
So while some people had government cheese in my neighborhood, I only had what my mom could afford. And so my mom couldn't afford an apartment, so we bounced around and we rented rooms. We rented rooms from people's homes. We rented rooms from people's apartments. We lived in a plywood shack in the back of a backyard for a while. We lived in garages. And at one point, I think this is probably one of the worst places we lived in. We lived inside of a meat locker. And a lot of my friends from high school, they probably don't know this, but it was a meat locker that was built inside of a building from the 1920s, a really old apartment complex. And my mom used to know the lady that owned the main unit there. And that lady had a key to the meat locker, where the design originally was so that the people that live there can store their meat inside the meat locker downstairs. But she rented the meat locker to us, and obviously the meat locker was off. We weren't, below zero temperature in there. But in the winter, it just so happened to be that winter in California was really cold, really cold. It actually hailed a few times that winter, and that meat locker was made of metal, and so it was super, super cold in there. We had this little tiny space heater, and we had these really thick wool blankets, and the meat locker was only big enough to have a bed in there. And a lot of people don't know this, but my mom, in order to provide us with the meat locker to live in, she had to go and live in, she was an elderly caregiver because her credentials for being a mathematics professor didn't transfer correctly to this country. So she had to work as a caregiver, and she lived where she worked, right? She was taking care of somebody. And so we lived pretty much alone. Although she called every single day when we were supposed to be back from school to make sure that we had gotten back to school, and we would talk on the phone. We were just kind of there. It's really easy to live in an environment like that and think there's no way I could ever get out of this place. Ironically, the name of that neighborhood, what I'm describing right now, the nickname for that neighborhood was Barrio Sal Si Puedes. It translates to the hood where you get out if you can. That's the actual literal translation to that. The hood where you get out if you can. And although many people might look at my life and they might think I'm just an average person, I'm just some guy who has a job, who has a house that he lives in. Just an everyday Joe. As far as I'm concerned, I'm great. I'm not O.J. Simpson great. He came out of the ghetto too, and he achieved amazing things in his football career. I'm not Michael Jordan great. But I survived a gang-infested neighborhood, and I managed to pull myself away from that environment. And even though I don't have a traditional education, nobody was giving me a scholarship to Princeton or hell, UCLA for that matter. Nobody was going to support me to go get a degree. I have managed to work for some top-end companies, and I have self-educated myself. I have spent endless hours reading books, learning about processes, procedures, software development. I have spent endless hours on the internet researching how to build websites, how different technology trends. And because of the jobs that I've had, I've been fortunate enough to have been pushed to learn like standard processes in corporate America, and that has opened curiosity in my mind to go learn about more things. And I have never stopped learning. I have never stopped learning. I have pushed myself constantly to learn more and more and more. And I can tell you right now that I, with confidence, can have a very in-depth conversation with a financial analyst, with a financial advisor, with an economist. And not only can I understand what they're talking about, I can have a very, very in-depth conversation and discussion about finances, world economics, national economics, you name it. I can also walk into a room and talk to somebody about Picasso and Monet, the Impressionist era. What does that mean? The Art Revolution in France. I can walk into another room and I can talk to somebody about classical music, my favorite pieces, who created them, what was their life like, what they did, who they were. Bach, by the way, Christian Bach is one of my favorites. I also like Mozart. I knew that in that 24th Street neighborhood where I grew up, I grew up there. But my mind knew that I was supposed to be something else. You know? And I'm gonna tell you something. I love, and I send nothing but my heart to every single one of my friends that I grew up with. Because they played a very intricate role in who I became. You know, we had that kind of neighborhood where if you messed with one of us, you know, like my friends were there for me. Like, you know, we ended up going to walk together to school, so nobody would want to jump us because we were kind of like the little group that was walking to school. We looked after each other. We were a brotherhood. And I appreciate that. And I know some of them have found better lives, you know. Some of them, unfortunately, have been victims of that environment and have fallen, but nothing but respect and love for all of them. And that said, though, greatness is sometimes dictated by this perceived idea that you have to reach pinnacles. And you know, greatness can it's something that you can decide what it is that you want your greatness to be. My quest is to constantly grow. My quest is to constantly overcome obstacles and become a better person in the process. I don't want to accept my current situation as the situation that is my life, ever. If I today own a home, this isn't good enough for me. I want to do better. One day I want to get somewhere better. If, you know, tomorrow I own 10 houses, then I want to figure out how to do something else that's going to better me and help someone else. Because greatness it's not just about being. Greatness is about what you do with greatness, I think. You know, the reason why I'm here talking to you And the reason why I was able to pull myself out of those neighborhoods and become something else, and the reason why I have these ideas is because there were some great people in my life. People that nobody knows their name, but they were great. They dedicated their lives to help kids like me. There's a man out there, his name is Art Capagan. His sister was my 4th grade teacher. Miss Capagan was amazing. But I met Art when I was in 4th grade. He was in college at the time. And a few years later, when I was just getting out of high school, I went to work for Art. He used to lead this project called Si Se Puede. It Can Be Done. That's the translation. And it was a liaison project that helped at-risk youth, that helped kids like me. In high school, you would have every high school had a member of this program assigned to that high school. And our job was to identify kids that needed support and to bring that support to them. So, whether it was they needed tutoring or they needed, to different types of activities to build interest in other things. So we were basically like program creators that would work with the high schools to create these programs so that we can provide support to these kids that needed it. For lack of a better way to express this, it was probably my first real job. And I loved it. I loved that job. Art had been the guy who had been assigned to my junior high when I was in junior high. And he used to do these activities at junior high. And so when he came to me and said, "Hey, Alexis, you went through this program and you're finishing, you're just coming out of high school, and I know you've been in trouble and whatnot, but it'd be a good way for you to kind of look at life a little different and take you in a different direction. I think this is a good opportunity for you. You should come and see if maybe you want to come work with us." And I jumped at the opportunity. And Art is not, you're not going to see him on TV. He's not some famous name. But I can tell you that man influenced the life of 1 million kids. Myself being one of them. And that guy is an amazing person. He was influential in the development of hundreds. And he dedicated his life, his professional life, to making the world a better place. And like Art, there are many people out there. Nancy Q. Bent. I don't know if she's still alive, but she was also an amazing woman that dedicated her life to helping kids, including this one. And because of those great people, I'm here. Nancy was my probation officer. She was my community alternative program probation officer when I was a kid. Because just like other kids in my neighborhood, I got in trouble. But Nancy was like a second mom to me. She just really was vested in making sure that I was going to be okay. And she was vested like that with a lot of kids. So I want you to think about greatness not as this thing, this iconic thing. You don't have to go out to the moon to be great. I don't have to go win the Indy 500 for my daughter to know that I'm great. Sometimes greatness is just being the best parent that you can be. When I was working for Art, I was working for Santa Clara County, and Art said something to me, I'll never forget it. You know, when you're working with at-risk youth, it's really hard to stay in a mindset where you see kids kind of just falling through the cracks, and you're trying to just save one, right? And one day I came frustrated. I had a very complicated case. I'm not going to get into it, but I was very frustrated with the outcome of that case and what happened with this little girl. And I walked into a conference room, and I was in tears, and I was just like, what's the point? We lose this battle every day. And Art said it's okay. Because if you can just save one, if you can just save one kid, Alexis, you've done an amazing job. Sometimes being great is about just being that person for the one kid. You know, I look at my daughter every single day, and every day that she's with me, I look at her and I pour my knowledge, I pour everything I can into her. I spend every minute with her. I cook with her. We joke around, we goof around, we watch TV. When we're watching TV, we watch TV. Right now, we're not watching TV, but we go for walks. We go shoot hoops. I read with her, and I'm fortunate enough that I have a partner that is supportive of that as well. And she reads with us, and she goofs around with us, and we have amazing moments. And I share my life with her, and I tell her about the things that I went through growing up, and I tell her why I spend so much time with her and why I do these things with her. Because there was one thing that I had. There's one thing that I had that might have been the number one reason why I always knew that I needed to be something different. There's one thing. There was never the slightest doubt of how much my mom and my dad loved me. My dad wasn't around for a large part of my life. Him and my mom separated, and he kind of went his way, and we didn't really, we were distant. He just, he just had a different life. But even in his absence, somehow when he was around, when I was little, or maybe there was just something about what he was doing energetically, somehow I always knew how much he loved me. It's weird. It wasn't about child support checks. He never paid child support. It wasn't about presents at Christmas. He never sent Christmas presents. We didn't even talk. But I've always known that my dad adored me. And I always knew that my mom, holy Moses, man, my mom loved me unconditionally, and she gave the impossible for me. She poured her knowledge. She taught me how to cook. She worried about things that I never even saw coming, and then taught me how to pay attention to things that I never even saw coming. And she just constantly just never wasted a second that she had with me, talking to me about something that didn't make any sense or a waste of time. She never wasted a moment. She constantly poured knowledge into me, and she constantly poured this idea that I was loved. She made it very clear that was the reason why she talked to me the way she talked to me. That was the reason why she raised me the way she raised me. That was the reason why she read to me the books that she read to me. That was the reason why she made me read when I didn't want to. That's the reason why she made me go to school when I didn't want to. So sometimes being great is just about being a great person. It's not about the money you have. It's not about the car that you drive. It's not about the clothes that you wear. Being great is about giving. And sometimes giving is just giving thoughts, like me sharing these ideas with you. Today, as you're going through your day, as always, I'm going to invite you to share your challenge with me. I want to hear from you. Post it on the comments. Tell me how you're going to challenge yourself. And today, as your day is going by, as you're thinking about this video, if you watched it, I want you to think about what will be your greatness. How will you be great? Not what car you're gonna buy, or whether you're gonna get a Ferrari, or how much money you're gonna close in your next deal. I mean, those are great things too. Don't get me wrong; they're awesome achievements. But I want to know, like, for everyone, just, and I don't want to know. You don't even have to share that with me. It'd be great if you did, but if you don't, that's totally fine. What I want you to think about, though, what I want you to think inside of here is, what will be your greatness? How are you going to be great? Who are you going to be great for? I got one less day. One less day to go. If you like my thoughts and you want to follow my videos, I would love it. And if you want to challenge yourself and join me on this 365-day challenge, today could be your day one. Have a good one. Take care.